Colorism is a discriminational type that is primarily focused on the African American community. Back in the olden days, they had brown paper bag testing, and if your skin tone was darker than a brown paper bag, then you were not received well. You were not accepted. People were afraid of you. They thought you were evil, that you were angry, that you were just completely dangerous, and you had no um, type of abilities within you. You weren't capable of anything. Whereas if your skin tone was lighter than a brown paper bag, then life was better for you. Well, life was perceived to be better. You were able to join sororities. You had higher opportunities to achieve. You were accepted well. People thought you were friendly because your skin tone was closer to white than it was to black or brown. And turns out life wasn't as great as the dark skinned people thought it was, because if you're light skinned, you also get hit with negative connotations as well. People call you red bone, light bright, um, just all sorts of names like that. Ayana and Oprah, they were talking about that on a segment where people mainly focus on how colorism affects darker people because they were called coons and just like Blackie and just other terrible names. But two light skinned women spoke up and said, we go through struggles of our own. We're not as accepted as you think we are. On top of being called light bright or red bone or any of those derogatory names, they were also called coons as well because they are still black. There was also a prison study where they focused on 12,000 cases of women, and the lighter your prison sentence, the more lenient the term you received. No matter what the crime was, they just thought you were friendlier and like your presence was received well. They were more empathetic toward the situation. These types of attitudes can easily be translated to the classroom, but it is the job of the educators to, you know, leave that stuff outside the door. No matter how the students feel about themselves, the teacher should always provide them with certain tools and opportunities to have academic success. They should have their students, choose academic success rather than having it forced on them. No matter how the students feel about themselves, it's more than making the students feel good. It's preparing them for a greater future, no matter the skin tone. Teachers should also um, let the students, well, encourage their students to have cultural competence. No matter what their skin tone is or what their culture is, they should also take pride in their education while still having their cultural identity. People feel like black people who are educated are trying to be white, and that's highly problematic. I remember when I was in school, I was in the higher level classes, but I had a lot of friends I grew up with who were in the lower level classes. And just because I was smart and black and I was trying to achieve something, then they said I act white. I was raised to want to achieve things. I was raised to be the best. So naturally, I was in the better classes because my parents pushed me that far. I have a few personal experiences with colorism. I saw firsthand discrimination, but I didn't say anything because I just assumed my boss was correct. I worked in a small town restaurant, and I used to live in a predominantly white community, and they didn't want to hire black waitresses because they didn't feel like they were good workers. They felt like they were lazy and irrational and arrogant and just all sorts of preposterous things about black people, which are stereotypes. They didn't feel like the white people would receive them well, that, it would just be it would be a waste of time to hire them.
Colorism plays a very large part in society, mainly in Asia and Africa. Although I think it's very prevalent here in the United States, it is more so on these continents. I would like to focus more on how it is affecting African Americans in the United States on a daily basis and in pop culture. If you have darker skin, you are thought to be less appealing, dangerous, threatening, and less attractive. Those with darker skin also, statistically, are less likely to get jobs, more likely to get in trouble, and less likely to do well in education. Although this can be attributed to race, the same problem occurs within the black community. When looking at pop culture, the same as a parent. Watching television and listening to music, colorism is everywhere. Music videos on BET and MTV are probably the best examples of this. Take a typical music video, where the majority, if not all, of those in it are black. The women in the video are light-skinned, and there are a couple, if that, who are dark-skinned. The light-skinned women tend to be in the foreground, and the dark-skinned women are often in the back. The same goes for men. In the same music videos, the light-skinned men are the cool ones with all the ladies, and the dark-skinned ones tend to be in the background or getting in some sort of trouble. This is also seen in movies and heard in music. Although there are a few movies and songs out there that seem dedicated to dark-skinned black people, the majority do just the opposite. The dark-skinned men and women are usually the last ones to get on dates or get hit on, and are usually the first ones to get in some sort of trouble. All of these things are doing nothing positive for children or teachers alike. Culturally relevant pedagogy is the most important thing in education. You must have students and staff who are knowledgeable in various cultures. By linking students' home life and life at school, you are educating each student tenfold. Colorism directly affects the academic success of students. Those with lighter skin tend to perform better in school than those with darker skin. Teachers are able to put a stop to colorism in their classroom through focusing on critical consciousness. By teaching students how to be more critically conscious, you are helping them look at cultural norms and values and then critique them. Through this, the students will be able to decide for themselves what is the truth as opposed to what is portrayed as so. One example of how colorism plays out with children shows up in a study done by CNN back in 2010. What skin color do you want? The opening question says the study. One example of how colorism plays out with children shows up in a study done by CNN back in 2010. What skin color do you want? Is the opening question to the study. In the video, there are two black children who appear to be 5 or 6, one boy and one girl. They're given a piece of paper with 5 children on it. All of the children on the paper have different skin tones and are in order from lightest to darkest. The boy immediately picks the lightest skin tone on the layout. When he's asked why, he says, "I don't know," but goes on to talk about how that picture is white. The girl picks the second to lightest color, and she says she wants it because it is lighter than this color, pointing to herself. She continues to say that she doesn't like the way that her skin looks. She says brown looks nasty for some reason, but she isn't sure why it's nasty. Then she chooses the darkest picture and believes that adults don't like that color because it's dark. The same question is asked to a slightly older white boy, and he picks the darkest skin tone as the ugly child. He says it's ugly because the white boys would make fun of him, being that it's the darkest one. Children are taught this from the first Disney movies they see, all the way up to the music they listen to and things they see on TV. It is our job as educators to put an end to colorism, as we spend the second most time with them on a weekly basis, other than their parents. It is our job as educators to put an end to colorism, as we spend the second most time with them on a weekly basis, other than their parents. At the beginning, these lessons may be confusing to them, but with enough of it, I believe it will help give them the voice they need.
I think colorism plays a very large part in society, and an even bigger one in Black society. Color, class, culture, and consciousness all impact the Black experience, both individually and together. It is very easy to associate colorism with class. Some say if you have a darker skin tone, you're at the bottom of the food chain and enslaved. The lighter the skin, the more wealthy you are, and the more privileged you are. It seems the Black people who have darker skin are looked at as insignificant or dirty and unsuccessful. Historically, African Americans with a lighter skin tone have contributed to colorism because they have benefited from the privilege of having a skin color closer to that of whites and have embraced the notion that privilege comes with having light skin in America. For example, during the slave times, house slaves received more privileges than field slaves, In modern times, lighter complected or biracial African Americans appear to gain more access to the social, political, and economic institutions of America than darker skinned blacks, generally speaking. Though W.E.B. Du Bois was an advocate for the black cause, his skin tone was of a lighter hue, and he was a graduate of Harvard University, one of the most prestigious universities in America. But he also experienced problems when he took on the black cause. And for instance, President Barack Obama, he was a Harvard graduate also, and although he embraces the African heritage of his wife, and she's African American also, he nonetheless is biracial. I believe if he said something about the racial issues in America, he would definitely be crucified. He would be told to focus on job creation rather than racial issues because white America as a whole is not interested in the black problem. Anthony Williams, a participant in the CNN documentary, said that you have to almost change yourself, dilute yourself to live in a white society. And I myself believe that. And one of the main reasons that colorism is such a huge problem is because of the media. Movies, television shows, music, and music videos make it beyond apparent that it's just how things are. Typically in the media, you see dark-skinned women being portrayed as masculine or aggressive. In music videos, different rappers or singers portray that they want a red bone, a long hair and thick girl. And if that's popular, then that's what everybody wants. They want the same thing. Well, the term red bone, meaning light skin. I have been called that plenty of times throughout middle school and high school, and it got me to the point where I was really irritated with it and stopped associating with people that did call me that. I think colorism produces stereotypes because it does not develop cultural competence in the classroom. But to develop cultural competence, teachers should encourage students to learn to maintain their cultural integrity and to stand up to colorism and not have fear in their skin tone. Culturally relevant teachers should utilize students' culture as a vehicle for learning. Teachers who use culturally relevant pedagogy provide students with a curriculum that builds on their prior knowledge and cultural experiences. Colorism should cultivate critical consciousness by allowing students to develop broader socio-political consciousness that allows them to critique and cultural norms, values, morals, and institutions that produce and maintain social inequities. As a future educator, I will not allow my students to be confused and or stereotyped about the color of their skin. I will teach them that what they had and where they came from was a value. I will also develop and maintenance cultural competence by involving parents in the classroom, and by doing so, I will create research opportunities for students to learn more about their topics that are familiar and important to their culture.
Recently, a friend told me about a compliment she received where the person told her she was pretty for a black girl. During this generation, comments such as these are not rare in our black culture. Unfortunately, colorism has been looked upon as a part of our culture rather than the venom that is destroying it. Colorism, a practice where those lighter skin are treated more favorably than those who are darker. This manifests both interculturally and intraculturally, meaning both within our culture and ourselves and among other cultures surrounding us. The idea of colorism started with the roots of slavery, where the lighter-toned slaves worked closer with the master, making them more privileged and idolized by their darker-toned peers. Unshockingly, these same stereotypes derived hundreds of years ago are still influencing our black culture. University of Georgia's 2006 study showed that the employers prefer light-skinned black men to dark-skinned black men, regardless of their classifications. The study found that a light-skinned black male with a bachelor's degree and typical work experience was preferred over a dark-skinned black male with an MBA and most managerial positions. This study doesn't tell our black students that they can excel no matter the cost. This study shows our black students that no matter their efforts, or accomplishments, someone of a lighter tone will always be the preference. Statistics are continuously showing us that our black skinned males will never be good enough. These statistics contribute to institutionalized racism, creating power where blacks versus whites and light skin versus dark skins are going to continuously be interjecting with one another. Statistics show that 59% of black males in public schools are suspended. 67% make up our special education classrooms, and 30% are more likely to flunk out of school. So never mind all of the proofs in society. Never mind all of the proof society shows us to bring down our black boys just for being black, but the degree of their melanin in their skin is playing against them as well. Dr. U.B. Beloy discusses the history of color complex in her interview with Ebony magazine. She states that colorism is something we have internalized. We have not yet realized that these ideas, these conceptualizations that have been projected to us, operate from outside of the black culture, meaning that we have learning to accept these stereotypes and mistreatment about our skin color just because of someone else outside of our culture telling us we had to. To win this battle of light skin versus dark skin, colorism, we must start in our classrooms. We must make our students aware at a young age that they are beautiful, no matter their skin tone, their curly hair, their kinky eyes, their big nose, their big lips. They are all beautiful. And to encourage that, we must teach them equally the same practices. We must connect to them through our curriculum and our reading books and in our compliments we give to them on a daily basis. We must greet them equally. And good morning to you, and good morning to your lighter tone peers as well. As a teacher, we must remember that culture is one that brings our classroom together, not divides us. Diversity is what unifies us, not divides us.